Welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. I'm Grant.
And I'm Alexander.
Today we took the opportunity to play a prototype of a game that is currently on Kickstarter. The name of the game is Knights of Fire: Battle for Budapest. If you remember from 2016, there was a game that came out from Cloud Island called Days of Ire, and it is a card-driven game based on the 1956 Hungarian Revolution against the Soviet Union, trying to break away from their control and influence. So this game is the follow-up to that initial game. This game is the third and final days of the revolution itself. I believe the first game covered the first 3 days. Where these games are different and where they differ is this game is more of the revolution has happened. Control of the city has been taken over by the Hungarian Revolution, and now the Soviets are pissed and they're coming back for retribution. So they're coming back with their heavy tanks, their garrisons, their jackboots to take control back over. So that's what this game focuses on, and it's a card-driven game. It is a game that does not use events on the cards, but it does use op points to fuel various actions. The game is very interesting. I thought the design is very fantastic. We'll talk about some of the elements that we really liked. But Alexander, what was your impression of the game after our first play? And it's important also to talk about, we played... Go ahead and tell them what we played.
There's a few different modes that this game does. There is a competitive mode, where a player plays as the Soviets trying to take back Budapest, and one player plays as the revolutionaries. And then there's another cooperative mode, where you both play as the revolutionaries in almost like a tower defense, trying to fend off
together
the Russians coming in, which are controlled by an AI.
Right.
We played the cooperative mode. We did that because we play a lot of competitive war games.
And we wanted to shake it up
something
a
different.
bit.
Yeah, and I feel like, having played the cooperative mode, I feel like I know how the competitive mode would look like. Mm-hmm. But I think if you play the competitive mode, it would be harder to see what a cooperative one would feel like. So I think it was neat to do it that way. As a cooperative game, it was really good. I had a fun time. You both kind of control the same revolutionaries in the middle, and you both have a separate deck of cards, and you're trying to do your little bits that you can. So this game it's area impulse card driven game. Mm-hmm. So the city's divided up into sectors, which correspond to 3 different Soviet divisions, and within those sectors there's small districts which are numbered, and some of them are kind of like objectives. They have little red stars that the Soviets are really trying to go for. And what you'll do is you'll spend your ops points on your cards to either move your insurgents around, to do ambushes, to do open street fighting, to try and rescue civilians and get them out into Austria, to try and rescue them from all the carnage, and to set up barricades, do lots of different things with your op points. So you get that very the typical, how do I use my ops from a card-driven game. Love that. Your hand is a puzzle every time.
Well, it's about efficiency. How do I spend the available points that I have to fuel the actions that I want to take, but I don't get change. You can't use extra available ops that you use to fuel an action onto another action. So it's really about an efficient hand management and resource management game. The resources I'm talking about, other than your points on your cards, are each of these, and you'll notice, and we'll show you a little bit closer, these are blocks that represent the insurgents. Some are locals. They aren't as powerful, meaning their symbols are more reactionary, like the medical or the peace symbol, whereas some of the other insurgents or more trained personnel can do ambushes, they can do open attacks, trying to think what else they can do. Build barricades. Those other actions come with those more trained, so it's a matter of using those resources in the form of these men efficiently and spread them around the board so that you have a lot of different options. You never want one group to only have the same icon.
Yeah, that's
be very bad.
you know, in the random distribution at the beginning, that kind of thing can happen when you get clumping of icons, and you've got to spread those out to try and get the benefits across the whole city.
Because you can't take an action unless you have that icon.
Yeah.
So if you want to ambush a tank column and destroy one of them, or not destroy them, you simply disable.
Yeah.
You have to have a Molotov cocktail symbol on your card and on the unit
And
that
you
you're
have
using.
to have enough ops to do that
yes,
as well.
which costs 3.
So there's a lot of trying to synergize where your troops are, what cards you have, and there's a way when you play cooperatively, I can kind of give a card to the other player.
Called
I'm sacrificing that,
called strategizing.
And then they can use that and they gain those icons. So you can help each other out a little bit. But all of that comes at the cost of using up all of your cards. Right. And I think at the beginning of the game you start with like 7 cards. And as the
morale level.
Yeah, as the Hungarian morale drops as you take losses, you get fewer cards later in the game, which really crushes you.
It actually is very punishing.
Yeah.
When we went from that 7 to 5 cards, it was like you kicked me in the stomach.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was almost unable to do anything really effectively, and we became really where we're only doing 1 action a turn, I felt like. But that's cool. It's also part of the game. You're running out of resources. You're being pushed back.
It's surrounded by all sides. And,
Yeah.
and I really liked it. I thought that was excellent.
Oh, that was great.
The Soviet juggernaut, it will destroy you. This is a very difficult game to get to the end of.
Right.
Especially with that snowball effect kind of halfway through the game when the morale drops. And that was fun. Like, we lost the game. We actually won.
Right.
But
we lost in the point that the revolution was basically wiped out.
Yeah,
we had to surrender.
We had to
basically.
surrender because we had less than 6 dudes, and
had
we chose
3.
to surrender.
Yeah.
We didn't want to play it out and just have everyone die. But in surrendering, we had done so much damage to the Soviet prestige that we ended up with a victory.
Right.
Which that's less likely to happen. But, you know, we'd done so much, we'd inspired the rest of Hungary to kind of rise up, and the revolution would continue instead of being entirely quelled.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it was. It was like we had sowed the seeds of revolution in our fellow Hungarian brethren,
and I thought
which
that
is
was
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun playing this. You know, it's a tower defense. It reminds me of games like what is it? The States of Siege series, where you're just getting beset on all sides.
From every side.
This gives you a similar feel, but you get a few more richer, deeper mechanics. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. The other thing that we didn't really talk necessarily about up front was one of your early goals or original goals is to help your civilians or refugees, and these are cardboard counters, and they are spread out evenly amongst the different districts. And they have a number value on the back ranging from 0 to 2. And that number value is important because at the end of the game, when you surrender or the game comes to an end, you are going to reduce the Soviet prestige, which once again, your goal is to get it to 0 for a victory. So you're going to reduce that prestige by the total sum of all of the civilians you allowed to help escape to Austria, it says, I think, on the board, correct? So we ended up actually 2, 4, 6 with 9.
Yeah,
Negative 9 prestige at the end of the game because we focused early on trying to get those guys out. So we spent a lot of our resources, and it's very expensive. You have to spend 6 op points to get a civilian to flee, minus the present in that space insurgent units that you have. So if you have 2 insurgent units, you're only going to use 4 of those points.
And early in the game, that's pretty much everything. It's either 1 or 2 dudes in each space.
Right. So that was another thing we had to try to get, and we chose in our discussions and strategizing, let's get those civilians out first because they couldn't then get arrested and they couldn't then become removed and end up hurting us.
You want to clear those out and then defend.
Right.
Try and do as much damage to Soviet prestige. Because if you can get it to 0 during the game, you instantly win. We didn't, but in
we had it down to 7?
Yeah, something like seven.
6. I think we had it down to 6.
Yeah, and then we,
Yeah, -9 morale took us below 0.
Yeah, in the final scoring, you're like, yeah, all these people got out. It actually is a good thing. Yeah, you died, but you died martyrs kind of thing.
Right.
Which was neat. And this is a topic that I didn't frankly know anything about, really. So it was fun playing this, learn something new. I didn't play Days of Ire. I wish I had. I just wasn't there for that day. And this was really cool to play. It's kind of something in that theme.
And Days of Ire is a fantastic game in and of its own right. It is different. It shares some elements, but you're really trying to, in Days of Ire, create or complete missions using icons. So it's kind of set collection, and it's a very cool thing. This is very different. And I like that. So the games are not simply a carbon copy of each other.
And this is it the same designer?
David Turksey was the original designer of Days of Ire. In this edition, Brian Train, who we've done many games, Colonial Twilight, A Distant Plain, Red Horde, and others, Winter Thunder, he helped design this game, and he actually is the one that provided us.
But this is a different company. This is Mighty Boards. So got a new company. I thought, we played a prototype copy, but the production's going to be very good based on what they have prototype at least.
Yeah,
and I had a really good time doing this. I highly recommend this game. I had really fun. It plays we're slow.
We are.
But I think it says an hour and a half to play this.
Yep, 60 to 90 minutes.
Once you learn the rules, you could easily do that.
Yeah. In our later turns, as we figured it out, we were... But when you have 25 insurgents on the board, it requires a lot more thought. When you're down to 7, you're able to go much more quickly.
And the competitive one, your insurgents are hidden from the Soviet player, so they have no idea what they're going up against when they're putting their regiments in. So that's really neat. You know what you've got to try and defend, and you're moving guys around to set up secret ambushes.
Yep.
So I thought that's really cool. I thought the AI for the cooperative was...
It worked well.
Yeah, I thought a very simple system, but it works well. And, they put the pressure on you.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. Very simple AI. It's a number of cards, and you roll a dice, do this card, and it has a priority of things that it'll do. And it's very simple to understand, very easy to do.
Another thing I enjoy about this game, as well as its predecessor, is the art. The art is fantastic. As you can see, the cover of the box is very well done. I think the graphic design is very interesting, and it harkens back to that 1950s era in the text and the Soviet Cyrillic type font that is being used. Very well done. I think it's very pleasing to look at. The cards are nice. The icons are great. I just think a lot of the elements that are involved in this game will be pleasing to you if you enjoy planning and if you enjoy trying to figure out your most effective or most efficient way to deal with any given task that you have before you. You can see it coming because some of these cards you can see ahead of time. Some you cannot. We'll show you a little bit, but they're obscured. So you can kind of look at these and go, we need to try to plan for this, although they happen randomly.
Yes.
You're going to roll a die, and you do the one that
in the row,
rolls.
that's that number, basically.
So really liked this. This is called the Konyev variant, or the cooperative, General Konyev. I really liked this game. I feel like this will be a game that will appeal to those who enjoy war games, but also enjoy, once again, that Euro type of planning and efficiency and trying to, in many ways, figure out, once again, how to beat the puzzle.
Yeah, this is kind of a mid-ground between Euro and war games to me.
Agreed.
And I think this would go down well in a lot of different groups as a very tense game, but this would also make an excellent solo game. The cooperative AI is really good, and you could just do the 2 decks, and you just have them out very, very easy, and you'd get a very rewarding solo play still. Because there's nothing that we're secretly trying to do from each other. It's just cooperative.
Right.
So you could easily play this solo, have a really good time doing it.
But in the competitive game, there is a lot of hidden information, a lot of secrecy. You're trying to hide the value of your civilians. You're trying to hide the types of units that you have available. And those are good things. That fog of war, uncertainty, that's going to add a lot of replayability to it. And it's also going to add a lot of, frankly, frustration and difficulty, which we enjoy. We love insurgent games where you don't exactly know what always is going to happen. So what's something you maybe didn't understand or didn't like as a part of the game?
The only...
I know it's hard to...
Yeah, with this one it's hard because I thought there were some really good things. I thought the AI was extremely clean, was very good. There were just a couple of times where the rules weren't clear, but it's a prototype copy, so they'll clean those up. I think some of it was more of a translational thing more than anything. But I don't know if I loved the artwork. I don't know if there's anything I didn't like with this. I thought it was a very unique game, and I had a blast playing it.
Yeah, very solid. I'm going to struggle to find. I think I would just be nitpicking. There were a couple times where some of the items on the board we were like, where is that? And I felt like some of the titles were small. I felt like those could have been enlarged or maybe highlighted a little better.
The Hungarian momentum tokens.
Yeah, which we ended up using these as our momentum tokens, and there's really no box or place to hold those. I don't know that that's a huge thing, but that would be nice to say.
Yeah, they mentioned it in
just track them.
They mentioned it in the rules, but
yeah, there's
so
nothing
in
on
theory
the board.
they'll fix that.
They'll fix that
So
before.
yeah,
but really liked it. We're going to show you very quickly the board itself, some of the pieces, look at the AI track, and show you a couple of cards, and we'll come back for some final thoughts.
So here's a look at the board. What you see, it's kind of just an aerial cityscape of Budapest. The board is divided into three kind of large regions of the city, which are kind of color-coded. Kind of light blue, slightly darker blue, even darker blue. Those correspond to the three different Soviet divisions. So you've got the 128th Guards Rifles, 33rd Guards Mechanized, and the 2nd Mechanized up here as well. Each of those divisions has 3 regiments within them. And these are just little counters. You kind of got a tank on them, 128 Guard. And there's a disabled side. And those are going to charge around the city, doing things. The Russian player is going to be moving those proactively, going and destroying things. If you use the AI for the cooperative, which is what we did, they have a priority of things that they'll do on each card, which keeps things somewhat unpredictable and very, very interesting. Each of these sectors is divided into numbered districts within those, and some of them have these little red stars. Those are kind of objective spaces. Those are the ones the Soviets are really trying to take. And what they're going to do is they're going to move around the board, killing your insurgents, and your insurgents are these little green blocks. And they're dropping these triangle garrison pieces. These are kind of generic Russian dudes. And they're dropping garrisons, which then kind of take over and militarize the city. If there's enough of these out, the Hungarian morale starts to drop. So you've got this morale prestige track up here. This kind of clear gem is the morale counter. This red gem is the Russian prestige marker. And they start all the way up here, and they'll come down. The morale drops as you lose insurgents, civilians get arrested, or if there's a bunch of these garrisons out that you haven't taken care of, your morale is going to plummet, which gets you much closer to losing. The Russian prestige drops, the more momentum the revolution gains. You gain revolution, and we use these kind of blank blocks as revolution markers, by doing ambushes, by doing open attacks successfully, and I think that those are really the ways to do that. When you successfully do those things, you know, people see that and it's propagandized, and everyone's like, yeah, we're actually winning. And, you know, the revolution gains momentum, the Russian prestige goes down as the world sees, uh-oh, they're getting into this bloody battle in Budapest. And that can change the outcome of the game, and it changed the outcome for us, which was very, very interesting. So we had to surrender, and we were in the morning of November the 6th. So we still had 3 more turns to go before we would have won the game. So we had to surrender, and in doing so, you kind of lose in a tactical sense. But because we'd rescued so many civilians, and because our momentum had always been very good, something we'd focused on by doing lots of attacks and ambushes, the Russian prestige was so low that we technically won the game in defeat. You know, the martyrs of Budapest inspired revolution in the whole rest of the country, and you win that way, that was very fun and interesting to have won something in defeat. I don't know if I've played many games where that's the case. So really the basics of the game are your hand of cards, and you'll start with 7 of these, and the artwork on these is really great. I love this style of artwork. It's almost this kind of graphic novel, comic book style. It's very thematic and evocative. These are really fun. I love these. And what you'll notice is you've got the black ops number, so that's kind of how many ops points you have. But there's also these red symbols. This is a barricade symbol, this is an ambush, this is a rally. What else do we have? This is a counterattack symbol, and I think there's that might be the only ones on those. And those are used, so you have to have the correct number of ops to do the action, but you also need the correct symbols. So to build a barricade, you got to spend X amount of ops. But you also have to have the barricade symbol, and you have to have an insurgent who is hidden, which means he's kind of like turned over, and he has to have the barricade symbol as well. So there's a lot of synergy that you have to get to work together in order to be successful. So the hand management and getting everything to work is quite typical of a card-driven game, but it's both simple in the sense that you don't have to worry about events or other things, but it's also very, very interesting. It's very tense. Each of your hand is a puzzle, trying to get enough cards played. And if you look on the track here, you've got this part's red and this part's white. Your morale is going to start up here. Once it gets past or below 19, your hand limit, your draw number gets cut from 7 to 5. So you get, you're losing morale, which means, this tactical part's not going well, and then your hand goes down, which compounds the issue. And we felt like early in the game we were doing okay for the first day. Once that morale plummets, you can do significantly less, and that snowballs as you start to get steamrolled. And things came to a head very quickly, and it was just very interesting. It was very tense, and it was a great theme. I thought that was very thematic, and it brought that out really well. Some of the things that you can do, you spend 1 op to move guys around. Obviously we only have 3, but all these guys didn't quite make it. But you spend an op to activate kind of an area, and you can move as many of the guys out of here into one area. So you can move 3 guys out to this one, or you could move them all or just one. If you have dudes with the barricades, like we said, you play the barricade card, and the barricade is, it depends, the cost is variable. It's 1 more than however many Russian regiments there are. So you could, in a space where there's no regiments, it costs 1 to build a barricade. Great. But if you've got a couple tank regiments in there, it starts to get very expensive to build a barricade. And the barricade typically is a buffer between you and the Soviets. These guys have to destroy the barricades before they'll attack you. Sometimes they'll just drive right on by because they don't want to bother doing the assault there. Rescuing civilians, kind of like Grant said, to rescue this civilian, it's always 6 minus the number of green pieces you've got. So it's going to cost 3 to move this out, and you just move it and it gets out. So sometimes you find yourself getting great hordes of dudes to do it cheaply, or you get into desperation mode where you've got 1 guy here and you sacrifice half your hands to get these out. And again, just more and more interesting decisions. These guys here that have the little Molotov cocktail on them, these guys are capable of doing an ambush, which means, they kind of flip up and become revealed, and you have to do 3 ops worth to do an ambush. So you got 3 ops, at least 1 symbol on your combination of cards, and they're able to disable either a garrison or, a mechanized regiment. You do that, you flip them over, great. These guys are inactive. Or you do the tanks, they're inactive. And that's important because if you kill or disable the garrisons, if you disable enough garrisons, you can actually gain morale back. But the converse is however many you don't disable, you're going to lose morale. So there's some give and take there. You might do a bunch of work to disable garrisons just to break even on that part of the game. With the regiments, you disable those, and when they would activate, so now we would activate 128th Rifle Guards. Well, half of the tanks are inactive, so only one guy's going to charge around the board doing anything. So, you've almost neutered this card, which is great. And we'll take a look. The kind of the AI here, it's got a bunch of text, and you kind of follow along. For each regiment in the sector, in increasing order, so you just go up the numbered order. You do whichever one of these can do. The first one that they can do, they'll do it. They might arrest a civilian. So if there was a civilian here, they arrest them. That's very bad, because that's points you don't get, and that actually hurts your morale as well. Or, if there's no one to arrest, they'll drop a garrison. If there's already a garrison, they'll do this down here. If there's insurgents but no barricade, they'll start doing damage if there's no barricade. If there is a barricade, they'll clear off the barricade. And then they'll do recon, which means they flip everyone so they're visible. That really hurts you, because you can't do any of your ambushes or barricade building, and they kind of snuff you out. And if they can't do any of this, then they'll hop along and move to an adjacent district. So it's very simple. It's not a complex AI. Some of them are a bit more out of whack. They won't activate a specific division. They'll do some very odd things where it's, one piece in each sector moves to like the most important place and start doing some damage. And what's really fun is this kind of priority in which they do those. So each of these kind of AI cards, the order cards, have a number on them, 1, 2, 3, 4, or the 5 or 6. And you just roll a d6, and we're going to activate number 5. So this one here. This then moves to the left. You activate all of this stuff. It's very bad, all the bad things happen to you. And then it's the next player's turn. They'll perform the actions they want to, and they can perform any number of actions, but they can only play a maximum of 3 cards. So you kind of have to, there's some action economy and card handling to save enough cards, because you don't want to pass. Because if you pass, now you guys don't get to do anything, but the Soviets are always going to finish up all their cards, so you'll start getting steamrolled if you end up having to pass. Not good. Then it comes back to my turn, but in between you do another order, so you roll a die, 4, 5, or 6. So this has even more, it's 50% chance this one's going to go off. So then we'll do this one. Now this one we weren't able to look at, because number 2 and number 4 are always hidden. So you've got 1, 3, and 5, 6. Those are face up when you deal these, so you can semi-plan, but your intelligence isn't perfect. So we had no idea what was on this, and now it's going to go off. And this one's activating the 2nd Guards Mechanized Division. So not great, weren't planning on that happening. So these guys are going to kind of do stuff which we couldn't see. And this is just a really fun little subsystem and game within this game. I have a great time doing that. There's a readiness track up here, which is the Soviet preparedness. As they're going arresting people doing civilian work, or if they're successful in combats and counterattacks, their readiness goes down as they're doing more civil work and cleanup. As you do more open attacks and do things successfully, their readiness goes up as they kind of get back into the street fighting with you. So this is really interesting. When you do open attacks, you'll roll a d6, and you roll a 6, that's their counterattack is unsuccessful. If they roll less than their readiness, you'll take a wound. If they roll substantially less, like 2, I think it's 3 fewer, then your guy is killed in the counterattack. So there's some gambling on when you counterattack and who you counterattack with. That's really fun. And that's really the majority of the game. You're trying to get the civilians out and trying to hold out as long as possible. I think would be very, very difficult to successfully get to the end of the game with pieces on the board. I think it would be almost impossible. Because I felt we played it really well, but things just get out of hand. So this is a very difficult game that gives you a lot of replayability, though, which I really enjoy. And again, this gives me a lot of feel like the States of Siege style games where it's just crushingly difficult, but that makes for a really good cooperative or a really good solo experience trying to get past these incoming Soviet regiments. I think it's very, very fun. And again, these aren't the final components. I'm sure on the Kickstarter they'll kind of bling everything out, but these were great components, so I have faith that it will be an excellent game in final production. So this is kind of the board, and we'll wrap up with some final thoughts.
So, if you've watched the video, you see that we did enjoy the game.
Yeah.
I think I would endorse this game. I think it's a good, solid game, well put together, that has a lot of elements that will appeal to wargamers as well as to those that prefer Euro games. This is not necessarily a hex and counter war game where you're pushing stacks of units around, but it gives you a similar feel because there is a lot of conflict.
Yeah, this is, I would play this with people who play things like Kemet or Cyclades, those kind of, Euro war game, Ameritrash games. This is historical, but it's not overly complex, and it's not like, oh, this is a heavy war game.
Right.
Like, this doesn't feel that way.
No.
It doesn't feel that way. This is a very playable and really fun game.
So that's our look at Knights of Fire, Battle of Budapest from Mighty Boards. Look for this on Kickstarter soon, and we appreciate you watching the video. Thank you.